conversation is going to put things in perspective for you. We're joined by Diptanshu Ray, who is the South Asia lead at NielsenIQ. Thank you so much, Diptanshu, for taking the time. And that indeed is the first question. You saw FMCG business that continued to grow during the second wave of the pandemic. It grew 37% in the second quarter. What are the factors, according to you, that led to that growth?
Okay. First of all, this 37% growth that you see is on the base of a disrupted period of last year, right? The way we look at it, right, if you just take Jan, Feb, March of 2020 to be the pre-COVID period, the base, right? And if you consider that to be 100, the FMCG industry to be 100 at a Jan, Feb, March, which was just pre-COVID, and how the FMCG industry has been moving since then, right? It actually tells a story, right? Come the first wave of pandemic in end March of 2020, which actually April, May, June quarter of 2020 was badly hit. From 100, it moved to a 79, right? And we actually have seen, and this is the India story, India FMCG story, where we actually have seen a V-shaped recovery in the next quarter itself, which is the July, August, September 2020 quarter itself. The FMCG actually had moved to a pre-COVID period of again 100, right? So from 100, it moved to 79, and then it moved back to 100. And from there on, it was on a growth trajectory, right? From 100, then in October, November, December 2020, it moved to 108. In Q1 of 2021, which is the calendar year Q1 2021, which is Jan, Feb, March of 2021, it moved to 109. And then when the second wave of pandemic hit us, it just slipped a bit from 109 to 108. So yes, the FMCG industry had been largely immune to the second wave of pandemic. One of the reasons is the consumers were, the manufacturers were well prepared, and consumers obviously didn't panic because the pandemic this time was not concentrated. It was quite well spread, and it was quite phased as well, right? Even the lockdowns were not that severe. It was the number of days of closure, stop closure was much lesser than that it was in the first wave. And since it was in a phased manner, it didn't have much of an impact on the overall consumption as well.
Right. I do want to understand what's happening now, though. If you look at July and August, what sub-segments of the FMCG business are standing out to you? What's doing incredibly well right now ahead of the festive season?
See, the entire growth that we see in the FMCG had been driven primarily by the foods, right? And it had been both a volume-led and a price-led growth. Primarily, it had been a price-led growth in the foods category. Within the foods, if you see 50% of that is staples and essentials, which had been having a tremendous price growth as well. So the momentum continues on that, and that makes this entire overall FMCG growth quite sustainable in the near future as well. And come festive season, we would anticipate that most of the manufacturers, Indian manufacturers, are going to make it up for the lost ground that they had last year.
Interesting. Diptanshu also wanted to understand, given that rural accounts to about 60% of India's total expenditure, how's the overall demand been, and what is their focus on while buying? Are they getting more price conscious, or is it more need based?
The rural had been a growth story throughout, right? Even when I said the rebound story of overall FMCG becoming to 100, at that time, rural actually had reached 209, right? And thereafter, in the last 3 quarters, if you look at, if I benchmark the same indexing, if I do the same indexing to the pre-COVID period, rural had been hovering under 115 in the last 3 quarters. It had been consistently, it had been growing and it had been steady. Even in the second wave, when we had a slight blip in the overall FMCG industry, the industry just moved 2% down from the Jan, Feb, March quarter, right? So quarter on quarter, there had been a 2% down. Rural actually had posed a 1% growth in that, even during this time. It is contrary to the overall belief that this time the pandemic had been reaching the rural and hence it would have an impact. But actually, rural we didn't see much of an impact. The primary impact we have seen is the lower town classes. What is working in rural is there are quite a few factors over rural, right? The rural growth is a good story. It is sustaining, and it is a sustainable growth. It has been sustained for the last 3 quarters. It's continued to grow, and we're confident that it's going to grow in future as well. Why do we say so? The first of all is if you look at, there had been a fundamental evolution or a shift that we have seen post-pandemic in rural, right? Rural have shown early indications towards adoptions and getting habituated to key staples and essentials, which actually was not there in the past. There had been categories where we have seen a phenomenal growth in rural post-pandemic and even during pandemic. The second is, and which basically talks about a very long-term growth in rural, because this is a new consumer, it's a new rural consumer that we see. That's one. Second, the short-term part, if you look at the Manrega and the lower unemployment boost, it has changed the rural landscape from an affordability perspective as well. Backed by good monsoons in the last 3 years and also the agricultural production. So from all in all, if you see, rural shows a lot of promise for the FMCG industry in the coming days as well.
Right. Also, given that traditional trade channels have largely sort of remained stable, but we are seeing strong growth in, certain verticals as well. Is this just a temporary phenomena, or can we continue to see strong growth when it comes to Omni channels, or for that matter, even online channels?
The Omni channel is the future, right? That's given. We all know that it's a future. It's slowly evolving, and we are all probably the industry is getting prepared for that. E-com actually emerged as a key channel, right? So it is for the FMCG, backed by both foods and non-foods. We have, and the case in point over here is we have witnessed, I think, the historic milestone this time in May 2021. E-com actually has posted a double-digit salience for the first time in India, right? We reached a 10% contribution for the FMCG industry in May 2021. So, and it is going to stay. Because the buying behavior has changed with the homebound economy now, that we are in the homebound behavior that we see. There are categories where people have actually shifted to e-com quite a lot. And this phenomenon is going to continue as well. Omni is the future.
Hi Diptanshu, this is Mubina as well joining in. I know you briefly spoke about pricing, that being a factor that customers are looking at. How is the entire discretionary space shaping up? The recovery in sales and, the volume pickup seen over there. And, considering the fact that largely and hopefully we are expecting this festive season to be a disruption-free one, with what momentum do you see the discretionary items pick up in terms of their demand and sales?
The growth of the discretionary items had been muted in the last few quarters, but it has been slowly inching up as well. With the mobility going up, with the restrictions going down, right? We do anticipate that the growth in the discretionary item is going to come back again, and they are going to do good in the coming days because they were inching up. So there had been a slowness in this. I think the recovery was there, but there has been a slowness in the recovery. And that is going to gain momentum in the coming days when the mobility, gets better, with the rules getting lesser stricter now.
How are you looking at, costs for FMCG companies? Because, right from soaps to a washing machine, costs for every consumption item out there has increased. Most of the companies have passed on the increase in prices to customers. How do you think customers have accepted these price increases? Because, most of these products are obviously, necessities. The nature of their demand is largely inelastic. So how are you looking at customer acceptance of the price increases that companies have passed on?
If you look at the MAT June 21 figures, right? So vis-a-vis last year, in this entire MAT 21, the growth overall FMCG has grown by 2.5%. Out of that 2.5%, 6% growth is actually a price-led growth. So yes, price is playing a big role in the overall value growth that we see in FMCG. How the consumers have reacted to it, what we have seen is the consumers have actually adjusted it to through the kind of SKUs that they pick up. If you look at the package, the SKUs that people are picking up, or the SKUs that are growing now, over here again, we classify the SKUs. We can classify the SKUs as mass, popular, premium, and super premium. Super premium being which are the price index to more than 140, and mass being less than 80, while popular being indexed to 80 to 120. We see a significant growth on the popular SKUs, popular priced SKUs, right? So people are actually moving to popular priced SKUs, and we see a bit of a shrinkage on the premium and the super premium SKUs, particularly on the discretionary items from the food, even from the foods category, and particularly on the staples as well. I see a lot of growth on the popular pricing categories. And that's how the consumers are reacting to it.
Diptanshu, we leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us today on ET Now and talking to us about the consumption trend seen. I think we're going to have many more conversations, seeing as it's a very exciting festive season as well that a lot of stakeholders are watching out for. So thanks once again.